Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we will be going through the draft grades for each of the two divisions listed in the video title. Before you jump ahead to your team's grade, if you are going to be critical of the grade or try to call me biased, please listen to my quick explanation of the grades before doing so. Here's the Cliff Notes version of that. First, I'm going to have each player's grade on the screen. These were handed out immediately upon every pick during my live stream. I would be happy to go over any specific player's grades in the comments if you really wish, or you can go check them out in the live streams. All right, and here we are on the screen. You can see my 2025 NFL Draft Grade Scale. As you can see, this goes through the entirety of the draft. The players their grades are based on where they're taken and what draft grade I have on them. So, if you are taken in the first 8 picks of the draft and I have an elite grade on you or a top 8 grade on you, you'd get an A. If I have that kind of grade on you and you were my guy, you would get an S tier type of grade. And as the draft goes on, A is my baseline to start the draft through the first 56 picks. So, for instance, here at picks 25 through 40, those are the late first round to early second round picks. If I had a late first round to early second round draft grade on you, you got an A. If I had a better grade on you, a straight first round draft grade or a top 8 draft grade, you would get an S tier there. If you had a worse draft grade, a straight second round, you get a B, okay? A is my baseline through the first 56 picks. That changes at pick 57 all the way through pick 111. So right in the middle here, a B. At the heart of the third round, pick 74 through 92, you would get a B if that's the same grade that I had on you, a third round draft grade, and so on. For being better, you get an A, and worse, you get a worse grade. And then after pick 111, the baseline is a C. So for day 3 types of picks, don't hold it against them too much. If they have a C or a D grade, a C is good. It means that you got the player at full cost, but there's nothing wrong with paying full cost for something as long as you get the value out of it, and that's what I'm considering to be a C. Of note, you may have noticed also that S tier is no longer possible for player grades once we reached pick 73, also known as the middle of the third round. No S tier grades given on day 3 of the draft. Pluses and minuses will be seen after some of the player grades, and for the pluses, that just means that the player was one of or multiple of the following things. A, they were a my guy. B, they were a team culture fit. C, they were a scheme fit. D, they fulfilled a team need that stood out to me at the time as something that really needed to be fulfilled in the draft. Minuses are rarely handed out, but they indicate some level of doubt or uncertainty that I have that raises to a level that I decided to give the minus on that. Once again, I look to not give those out. Pluses and minuses had very little impact on the grade. They're mostly eye candy. They do impact it a tiny bit, but for the most part, probably not at the end of the day. I'm going to cover some individual picks for these teams, but the purpose of this video is to grade the entirety of the draft as a whole for each team on a scale of S tier to F tier. That includes E tier, just like my individual player grades did. And for the overall team grades I present, they are calculated based on the following things. 50% of the grade is a completely subjective grade from myself. 35% of the grade is based on the number of players drafted and in which round they were drafted, also known as draft capital or player capital. 10% of the grade is based on the players' grades that I gave out for the first day and second day players, and 5% of the final team grades is based on the player grades that I handed out from rounds 4 through 7, the average of those players' grades. Trades made, whether a team won them or not, are not directly accounted for. However, they do still have plenty of indirect impact on 35 to 50% of the final grade, even more, because that would have an impact on the subjective grade for myself based on the players that they get, and they may also impact future draft grades. For instance, if you traded away a future first round, well, guess what? Now this is probably going to look harder. It's going to be harder to get a good grade, I should say, for this one alone, and of course it'll still impact other areas as well. Going back to this subjective grade, most of that subjective grade is determined by how I feel when I quote-unquote close my eyes. I ignore where each player was drafted, and I just take in the list of the players drafted. How does that group of names make me feel? Also, do I see the vision of this draft for this team? Did they ignore any positional needs that I felt they needed to address? Did they navigate the draft well? did they get in at the end of positional runs instead of getting in at the beginning of those positional runs? Those are the types of things running through my head as I come up with this subjective grade. For the player capital grade, this is an inexact science. I'm talking about the NFL draft. We know that we're not incredibly good at predicting who will and who will not succeed at the next level. Just like some say dating is a numbers game, drafting is also a numbers game. On average, roughly 2 to 4 players in any given draft will become Hall of Famers. I could also list off a whole bunch of other numbers about the draft, but I have faith that you get the idea of what I'm saying. The more tickets that you have for the lottery, the higher the chances of winning it are, and you can't win if you don't enter. The player grades count for a total of 15% of the final team grade. Day 1 and Day 2 picks are weighed at 2 times the rate of those of the Day 3 picks, 10% to 5%. This process is not perfect, but it's fair. And once again, I would be happy to explain in the comments any of the specific questions that you have. Let's get this show on the road, folks. We will start off this journey with the Buffalo Bills, and I found that this was a very Buffalo Bills draft when all was said and done. Also, with the first 2 picks of my 7-round mock draft, I gave them a cornerback, an edge rusher, and a defensive tackle. And look at that right there. They took a cornerback, a defensive tackle, and an edge rusher as well. Maxwell Hairston in the first round got them an A grade. I like him a lot. I think he's a nice fit for them in many ways and gives them a little juice there at the corner and fits a need. So, yeah, a lot of stuff there. Probably could have given that an A+. And then with pick 41, defensive tackle TJ Sanders, I thought that was a solid pick, maybe a little bit early for me, but I like him. And edge rusher Landon Jackson is a player who I also gave them. So I gave them Maxwell Hairston. I put to like 3 teams. Typically Los Angeles Rams, the Green Bay Packers, or the Buffalo Bills were like 3 destinations that I had him going to. And Landon Jackson, I want to say the only first-round destination that I had him going to was maybe I gave him to like Washington once, but was with the Buffalo Bills. He just was a very Buffalo Bills type of pick, and usually that would have been in the second round, though. Usually not in the first round. I think maybe once in the first round or twice he made it in there. But yeah, obviously thought that was a good value. That got an A+. Landon Jackson, not exactly my guy, but a super team fit is where that plus came from for him. That's going to bring us on to Day 3, and I thought that they had a great Day 3. In the 4th round, they took nose tackle / defensive tackle. Kind of depends how they use him. You would think he's a nose tackle, but he kind of does defensive tackle stuff better, and they're not exactly the same position, right? So Deion Walker, that got an F. I originally did have I think I had a 4th round grade on him for a while, but then some injury news came out that soured me on a guy who I was already worried about, and some sort of back injury that it didn't sound good. So I lowered him in my draft rankings. And, physically he's an absolute beast. He just doesn't really know what he's doing on the field, but if he's healthy enough to play and regularly and learn the position and he gets better, there's a lot of potential there, and definitely like another kind of Buffalo type of fit. Then in the 5th round, they had 2 picks. They took slot cornerback / safety Jordan Hancock. Really big fan of him. I don't know what the other plus is for. Probably team system fit, I would think. Gave that a C++. That's about the exact where I had him going in this draft. Then also in the 5th round, tight end Jackson Hawes, that earned an A. Thought that was a solid value at that point in the draft. Same with the next pick in cornerback Dorian Strong. He was not my guy. A lot of people were higher on him. I liked him. I think him and Jackson Hawes, I had like late 4th, early 5th round types of draft grades on those two. Maybe early 5th even. Either way, they both earned an A for those draft grades, so I thought a good value there. And then in the 6th round, they went with offensive tackle Chase Lunt, who was a bit of a my guy this entire offseason. Not one that I got to talk about a whole lot, because he was a little bit lower down in the draft grades, but still earned an A+ here. So Nice work there in the 6th round for Dorian Strong and Chase Lunt. And then in the 7th round, they finished up their draft with wide receiver Caden Prather. Got a C+ for that. Definitely a my guy. I thought, this was about the area of the draft that he should go. And he was one of a few guys, and he may have been the guy that I was talking about where I was kind of listing off during my live stream to the audience. Some guys where I was like, I would have thought this guy, like for sure will get drafted in this class at some point in terms of the wide receiver class. And then Caden Prather goes. So that gives you an idea of who he is. Kind of just like one of those high floor guys that you expect will be around in the league for a long time. Probably never be like a true starter and never like a big time impact player, but will be around for a long time on a team or on a couple of teams. Just one of those guys who will be around, and I fully expect that for Caden Prather. When it comes to one of the reasons that I like this draft so much is I thought that they had a wonderful mixture of like a variety of things. They had grabbed a lot of guys with a lot of like electricity, a lot of juice to them, as well as guys with a lot of practical picks and guys with good form, good mechanics, that type of thing. So two kind of opposite ends of that spectrum. Then I thought that they took some home run shots as well as getting some high floor guarantees types of players. Thinking about the Deion Walker versus the Caden Prather type of analysis that I just gave you. Then they grabbed role players compared to ultra versatile guys. Versatile guys like Jordan Hancock, and then you get your role players like Dorian Strong or Jackson Hawes, more so is a better example of like the role player type. And then you've got your athletic guys and your fundamentally sound guys, very much in the same grain as what I started with the electrical versus the practical. So a really good variety of types of players, types of draft picks, boom or bust, gonna be successful, and I like a lot of it. And if I didn't like it, I usually thought, well, at least this was about the area of the draft that they should have gone, as you can tell by those grades. So if I had to sum this draft class up, is that I have no input. I could have been sitting in this draft room. I would have sat back. You know me. I like to get my input in things. I like to talk about it. I would have heard the conclusions that they were coming to, and I almost certainly would have just said, yeah, can't argue with that. And not said anything, just kind of said that under my breath. If they paid me for being a consultant, I would not have earned my paycheck. So, or maybe I would have by letting them, I would have consulted them into doing what they were going to do anyways, and it would have worked out just fine for them. I really like this draft a lot. I think it's a very good draft. And ultimately, I gave it an A+. I thought it was a very good draft subjectively. In terms of the capital that they had in this draft, that got them an A. In terms of the first and second day player grades, on average, they got an A-. And on the third day, those player grades averaged a B-/C+. So all in all, a really, really strong draft results in an A for them. You can't argue with it, I don't think. Very strong draft for the Buffalo Bills. And that's going to bring us on to the Miami Dolphins. All right, a couple conflicting statements to open up some of my thoughts on this draft class for the Miami Dolphins. I thought that they addressed their needs mostly really well. However, as you will see by some of those player grades, in terms of the actual individual players, the specific players that they drafted, it was a little uneven compared to my board. My board, sometimes they definitely drafted from it. Other times, they definitely drafted not from it. As you can see, a couple of minuses. Probably the team with the most minuses, getting 2 minus players with minuses on them. Also, when it comes to agreeing with things that they did, I gave them Kenneth Grant at pick 13 in my 7-round mock draft that I did. Also, in the 2nd round, I gave them a mobile guard with that pick. I gave them Tate Ratledge instead of Jonas Avanaia, but similar enough types of guard prospects and obviously the same position. And then, just like them, with those 3 picks in the 5th round, I grabbed them a cornerback, a safety, and a defensive lineman. So, obviously, in terms of where we're getting these guys in the draft and in somewhat who we're picking and the types of players that we're picking to some extent, at least those first 3 picks, I and the Miami Dolphins were simpatico, very much on the same page. So, of course, we had that Kenneth Grant pick. That earned them an A+ there in the 1st round. I like Kenneth Grant a lot. And I had him, I think he might have been my 13th ranked player overall on my big board. Then guard Jonas Avanaia. I was a little bit lower on him than this. I thought this was a little bit of a reach. It earned a C++ grade though, however, because I really, really love the fit. I think that it's a system fit. I think that he's going to bring them some attitude, some stuff that they really need as well. It was a need fit by far and away, and he was kind of a my guy. So between all of that, C+++, good pick, you know? A little high, but what do I know? Then, in the 5th round, they took nose tackle Jordan Phillips, cornerback Jason Marshall Jr., and safety Dante Trader Jr. We started off great, okay? I'm loving the draft here after they took Jordan Phillips. Jordan Phillips is a guy who I actually said that I felt was a really good fit for the San Francisco 49ers, which, of course, Mike McDaniel comes from that same coaching staff, that same coaching tree. So this makes enough sense as to why they might have liked Jordan Phillips plenty as well. That earned them an A+. Then for the defensive backs, I didn't like them. F- for both of them, unfortunately. Then you got to the 6th round, and they added running back Ollie Gordon the second. And I wasn't the biggest Ollie Gordon fan, but he goes in the area of the draft that I thought he should go with. And the plus here is because, my gosh, did they need this? A big, bruising type of running back. I think this is absolutely fantastic for this team, and will be a big help if he's a good running back. There is a bit of a question mark there, so we'll see on that portion of it. And then in the 7th round, they took cornerback Quinn Ewers. I thought, good pick. I was of two minds with Quinn Ewers. First of all, every time I saw him, I was very unimpressed. I'm talking about in college. And so I was never understanding of all the hype on him being a first, second round talent over the past couple of years, potentially. However, I do think that there was enough potential in him to be drafted for sure, and something where he could be a surprise and be really good. I think, from my understanding, is that his confidence is he's kind of a broken quarterback. That's unfortunate. Hopefully, if there's ever a staff that can, this is actually a really good fit. I probably should have taken that minus away. B- grade, by the way, for quarterback Quinn Ewers. If there's ever a staff that can love on a quarterback to getting them to be mentally better, in a better place, and accepting of the talents that they do have and get the most out of them, maybe this is it. This isn't a bad placement, really, now that I think about it, for Quinn Ewers to Miami. I kind of do like that. And then they also grabbed defensive tackle Zeke Biggers, C+. He was never my guy, but he was also always on my radar as somebody I was kind of intrigued by. So there you go, a C+ for Zeke Biggers there with their final pick. What I will say, and I think this is the one time where a trade actually might have impacted my subjective grade by a little bit, is that I think that the trade up for Jonah Savanaia was a mistake, despite the fact that I do think he's a really good pick, and for them, for a lot of reasons, a really, really good pick. I would have preferred them grabbing Ariante Ursery or Tate Ratledge, plus still having picks 98 and 135. I would have liked having more picks and maybe not quite gotten Tate Ratledge I liked more than Jonah Savanaia. So, you know what I mean? That to me was a bit of a mistake to go up and get Jonah Savanaia, but I get it also, and, strong pick. So, My question at the end of the day here, and part of the reason why I wanted picks 98 and 135 in this draft instead of having to use them to go up and get Jonah, is is this enough for head coach Mike McDaniel to end up keeping his job at the end of the day? And I don't know, looking at it, that it's going to be enough to really get this team clicking again, so he's going to need to get back into the kitchen and cook up some schemes, because unfortunately last year he didn't really do that, and the NFL was already on top of it to begin the year, and then that didn't go so well. All in all, I have to put a couple words to it. What did I think of this draft? Bigger, more attitude, high ceiling, and they retained their athleticism overall with these picks. Subjectively, it's a B- for me. I do like it a fair bit. I do think there's some risk, and I wonder if it's enough, and I wonder if maybe if they hadn't traded up, if it would be closer to it being enough. And then, in terms of the player capital, too, they use some of that player capital. It's a B-. When we look at the player grades for the first 2 days of the draft, they averaged a B+. and two A pluses and a guy that I really, really liked a lot, though. And then from the third day of the draft, the player grades, average day C-/D+. All in all, yeah, I mean, it's a B- for me here. I think it's a pretty good draft, though. I'm not upset with this if I'm a Dolphins fan. I just don't know this is going to be enough to really get the Dolphins over the hump and help Mike McDaniel save his job. We'll see. That's going to bring us on to the New England Patriots. The first 7 picks are quite possibly exactly what I would have done had I been in the driver's seat for the New England Patriots, or at least something very similar. Maybe a player or two would have been different, or I think Kyle Williams is the only one that potentially might have been a little different. But yeah, can't argue with what they did to start this draft out. I felt like the evolution of this draft from a high view was that it evolved from reaching on the first pick to getting like exact value on my board for guys to getting good value on several of my guys. So let's get through those players and who they are. To start the draft off, I would have done the same thing, even though I just said that they reached on it. That doesn't matter. This is exactly what I would have done. Offensive tackle Will Campbell, that earns a B/B+. He wasn't exactly a my guy. Definitely a team fit. I probably just could have given it a B+ for that in terms of the need here and everything. I thought a very good grade. I don't know why I didn't just give it a B+. I was trying to be strict with it. I had given a bunch, I don't know. I was trying not to give out a bunch of pluses early on in the draft, and then, it happens. With the second round pick, running back Travion Henderson earned a B, and wide receiver Kyle Williams in the third round earned a B. With pick 95, center Jared Wilson, I thought that's a good value at that point in the draft. He got an A+. After that, safety Craig Woodson in the fourth round was a my guy as well. That earned him a C+. I had a fourth round rough draft grade on him. Then, later on in the fourth round, defensive tackle Joshua Farmer. I thought that was a really good value. I definitely had a higher grade on him, B+. I do get why he fell. There was some, I understood, but also did expect him to go a little bit earlier than that. And then in the fifth round, they took edge rusher Braden Swinson. Not a my guy, but I thought a very good value, and several people that I respect's my guy. After that, I don't know anything about any 4 of those guys. Kicker Andreas Borregales, I think, was the number 1 kicker prospect, maybe, so there you go for that. But offensive tackle Marcus Bryant, long snapper Julian Ashby, and I don't study long snappers, I wouldn't know how to. And then cornerback Kobe Minor to finish that up. They finished it up in a very New England Patriots way, really. But I do want to go back to that third round pick in center Jared Wilson. Back when I did a mock draft for them, I also attacked the offensive line pretty heavily and got them a center at pick 106. But I got them a much worse center, and I think it was Jake Majors, who went undrafted, than Jared Wilson at pick 95. Of course, I didn't have the ability in that 7-round mock draft that I did to move up to grab Jared Wilson. And also, I like him in the second round, so I probably grabbed him for a team in the second round. So obviously, this is a draft that got spoken about plenty because that number 4 pick was a center of a lot of talks throughout much of the offseason. And my one thing that it always boiled down to for my conversation about the New England Patriots and what they need to do in this draft and how they should attack it and where their mindset should be was that they must put a focus on this offense in order to make it function for Drake May and thus function for their own job security's sake and guarantee them, Drake May, everybody a happy-go-lucky time over the next decade plus in that building. Ultimately, I put a few words to it. I would have to say that they did what they had to do, and they quote-unquote ate their vegetables. Subjectively, I gave this draft an A-. I like a heck of a lot of it. Just with that finish, a bunch of guys, special teams, and guys that I don't know about, that's a bit of an A- for me. It's a very old-style New England type of thing to do there, of course. And then for the player capital, they had a lot of great capital here. They ended up getting an S-tier grade for that. In terms of the player grades, day 1 and 2, they got a B+ on average, and the third day on average a B-, and that grade doesn't include those NAs because, I don't know what my grade on those guys would have been. I didn't study them. So, all in all, we look at it, it's a pretty strong draft. An A+/A grade here for the New England Patriots. Real strong start for the new regime in town. And it was much closer to an A than an A+, but it was still within the range where it was an A+/A. But that's why the A is much bigger. That's going to bring us on to the New York Jets before we wrap up the AFC East. Looking at this draft, you can see it in the grading. I felt like they started well and they finished well. So let's look at that and the in-between. With pick 7, they took Armand Membu. This is what I did for them many times. This is what I said I would do for them. So no arguments here. Offensive tackle. Earned him a B+, B+ grade. Another one of those where I really wanted to go B+. I should have. Fits a team need. I thought that was a smart decision and all that good stuff. Then at pick 42, tight end Mason Taylor. Got him a B grade from me. Little high for me. And I get why the NFL likes him and everything, but I just wasn't as high on him. With pick 73, cornerback Azariah Thomas, gave them an A for that. I thought that was good value at that point in the draft. In the 4th round, they had 2 picks. Wide receiver Arian Smith. This was quite too early for me. Earned them an F-. And they also got slot corner / safety Malachi Moore, who I know a lot of people liked him. It just wasn't my kind of guy. Also an F grade there. Then in the 5th round, linebacker Francisco Mauigoa. I wanted to like him more than I ended up liking him, but there are things to like about him. Still, this was early for me. Got an F grade. And last up, at pick 176, they took edge rusher Tyler Barron. That got them an A+. He was my guy, and I thought that was good value at that point in the draft. So, big fan of the end of their draft. Obviously, that's my favorite pick of theirs, ultimately, in terms of the grading at least. I do have a big issue with the draft process here. Ultimately, I'm not so sure that this roster is in a position where they should have been trading up twice into rounds 4 and 5, giving up extra picks and capital. I still have several needs for them that went unaddressed. When you're a new coach and a GM, etc., I get it. I get wanting to go up to get your guys, but only on days 1 and 2 do I think it's really worth doing that if that's going to be your strategy, kind of like what Jacksonville did, right? You've got a roster that you need to overturn, and you got to get multiple guys on day 3 to help you overturn that roster. Think of what the Rams did a couple of years ago. Last year, I think Washington did it. Arizona's done it to so far less of a extent in terms of immediate impact on their wins and losses, but still to just help them just turn the roster over and turn it into their own team instead of partially their team, partially the team that they adopted. So I do have some issues with that aspect of the approach here from the New York Jets. There shouldn't really be guys, especially in what's considered a weak class, in the 4th and 5th round that you're leveraging all this capital to go up and get. I'm not going to sit here and do a redraft for this because it would just be a little too complicated to do the redraft, because ultimately I'd want to unwind those trades and everything, and it would just be very involved. But ultimately, I would have at least taken different players for those 3 picks that they did get there, obviously. And in my 7-round mock draft at picks 110 and 145, which is where they traded 145 up to 130, I also drafted them a wide receiver and a defensive back. But I took Torrey Horton and Lathan Ransom, who actually wasn't available in the real draft at that point, so they get a bit of an excuse for not taking Lathan Ransom. But, just saying, I would have rather those types of guys. Ultimately, I thought this was a poor process in my opinion, and that's my write-up for this. If I got to put one quote in bold print on the top of the website to get people to click on it, poor process. I gave them a C, subjectively, for this draft class. Player capital-wise, they did actually have decent player capital. Still got an A-, even with those trade-ups. So, I guess what they did, maybe you could say, is fine, because I guess they were working with a pretty good amount of capital to begin with. Days 1 and 2, the average grade of those players was an A- /B+, and on the 3rd day, they rose again. Now, E+ there. All in all, this was a B- grade for the New York Jets, and I stand by that pretty healthily there. Got some issues with it, but there's a few things that I like, and apparently still that draft capital. I just think that they wasted some of that draft capital, but that's where my grade takes into account the fact that I could very well be wrong about Arian Smith, Malachi Moore, and Francisco Mauigoa. Of course I could be. That's going to bring us on to finishing up the overall grades here for this crew, and the New England Patriots had the best draft of the AFC East, earning an A+/A, followed by the Buffalo Bills with an A, and then we took a big jump down to the rest of the division with the Miami Dolphins and the Jets tying it out at a B-. So I think we're seeing the rise of the New England Patriots coming soon. Buffalo maintaining and getting better. Maybe it'll be enough for them to really compete for that Super Bowl finally. And then, the New York Jets and the Dolphins floundering a little bit. That brings us on to the Dallas Cowboys draft. We're going to kick this off at pick 12 for the NFC North here by taking guard Tyler Booker. They got a C grade, a little high for me there. Could we have tried harder to trade back a little ways and still gotten him? I don't know if we still could have gotten him. Maybe not. There was a lot of talk about how much the NFL liked Tyler Booker. But then they started to turn this draft around, and let me be clear, I think Tyler Booker is going to be a very good player for them. With pick 44, they took edge rusher Donovan Azaraku, S-tier grade there. With pick 76, they took cornerback Savone Revel Jr., A grade there. And to start day 3 off in the 5th round, they took running back Jaden Blue, earned a B+ there because I had a much higher grade on them and he was my guy. At this point, I was really excited. For a moment on day 3, I wrote that I thought Dallas had a chance to make a run at a low S-tier type of draft. And then they didn't. After that, next 5th round draft grade, linebacker Shamar James, not really my guy. Some people liked him, F- for me. 6th round, offensive tackle Johnny Cornelius. I thought that was actually a good pick, good value there. Then in the 7th round, they took nose tackle Jay Toia. I wasn't a big fan of him. F, I think I had an undrafted grade on him. Running back Phil Maffa in the 7th round. D-, wasn't a big fan of Phil Maffa. I know there were probably Phil Mafias out there. There were people who liked Maffa. There was the Maffa Mafia. I wasn't a part of it. I just made that name up. If you're a part of the Maffa Mafia, feel free to use that, and I'll just take like 10 cents to the dollar on those earnings. And then to finish it off, Tommy Kings Bisotti. I didn't think that I was not very familiar with him, but I did scout him a little bit. I had an E grade. That ends up with an E grade for Tommy there. And, this didn't kill it down the stretch here for me to quite get so high on this draft. Love the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th picks there. My tagline for this draft for the Dallas Cowboys would be, if I was a fan, I'd be excited, because I would be. I would be very excited about several of these players. Some of them I wouldn't know anything about, but I'd also be hopeful about their futures, as you should be. Subjectively, I couldn't quite get up to an A, so I gave this as close to an A as I could get without giving an A B+++, okay? Player capital-wise, they got a B+. Missing a little bit there, but still above average because, they also have several picks. For the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd pick of this draft, they averaged an A- grade, so they made up for that poor start there pretty well. And on the 3rd day of the draft, they averaged a D grade, so not so great there. But, those are day 3 grades. They're less important. All in all, the Dallas Cowboys still got a B+. Strong draft. Like I said, I'd be excited about it. Wish it had started better because, this draft had some potential to be even better. That will bring us on to the New York Giants draft. They started off with edge rusher Abdul Carter with the 3rd pick of the draft. That got an A grade. Wasn't really my guy, otherwise it would have been an S-tier grade, but obviously, like him plenty. With pick 25, they did what I've been doing since like 3 months ago. I went and I looked back at how early I started doing this type of thing. Sometimes it was for Shedeur Sanders, sometimes it was for Jackson Dart. A lot of times it was for Jackson Dart. I actually talked about it plenty, about them possibly preferring Jackson Dart and why that would be. And that ends up being the case at the end of the day. So you're welcome for predicting that all offseason. Nobody gave me credit for this. Jackson Dart, pick 25, quarterback, going to New York Giants. That got a B+ grade for me. Little high, but it's fine. It's what I would have done if I was the New York Giants too. So it's fine. I get it. I would have I might have been okay with Shedeur Sanders if I knew what I was talking about. Maybe I wouldn't have been. That's going to bring us on to the third round draft grade. Defensive tackle, Darius Alexander. That gets a B. Good pick. That's where I had him ranked. Some people thought he was going to be a first rounder. I just didn't get there with him, and there we go. So good job by me on that one. I guess I do know what I'm talking about sometimes. In the fourth round, they take my guy, and just the most beautiful pick to go opposite Tyrone Tracy in that backfield. Running back Cam Scatterbo, A++. And I couldn't think of a better 1-2. I mean, I know there's literally better 1-2s in the league, but also in terms of just like peanut butter and jelly, pork chops and applesauce, Cam Scatterbo and Tyrone Tracy is right there with those two. Freaking love it. Fifth round, guard, Marcus Mbow. A lot of people thought he's going to be a first rounder. I couldn't get there on him. I still thought that this was a good value in the fifth round for him, though. B. Tight end, Thomas Fidone the second. You get that in the seventh round. This is a really strong draft grade, and I think that they got him at a decent value. He could have gone a little bit higher, and I would have been okay with it. And then they finished it off with cornerback Corey Black, which I'm betting a lot of people aren't familiar with him because I didn't see him on too many lists, but he got on my radar somehow. I don't remember how, and he's just one of those guys that got on my radar. Kind of my guy. D grade there at the end of the draft. A fine pick. Technically, I guess a little bit early, but it's the final pick of the draft. So what are they supposed to do, So what did I make of this draft? I did think that like a few more trench guys would have been preferred, but then when I look at it, and I look at Abdul Carter, Jackson Smith, Darius Alexander, Cam Scatterbo, Marcus Mbow, Thomas Fidone, it's like Corey Black. When would we have gotten more trench guys in here? I'm cool with the guys that they got. This has been the same strategy that I've executed for them for months now, in many ways. Case in point, in my 7-round mock draft, I started with Abdul Carter. I got them Jackson Dart. I took an interior defensive lineman. They took a defensive tackle there, interior defensive lineman. I took an offensive lineman. They took an offensive lineman. I took a running back for them. They took a running back. I took a receiver for them. They did not take a receiver. So an incredibly similar first 6 picks. What's the bold print on the newspaper? The combination of immediate impact and long-term planning just might be enough for Daboll and Shane to keep their jobs in 2026. That is what I think of this draft. Subjectively, I would give this puppy an A. It's a lot of what I would have done if I was in their same shoes. Player capital-wise, they weren't working with all of the capital. They got a B. First through third round draft grades averaged an A- to a B+, and the fourth through seventh round draft grades averaged a B+ to a B. This is a very strong draft overall. I like it, and it earned them an A- to a B+, somewhere in their type of draft grade. 2 thumbs up. Good job, New York. Unlike Miami, I think you might have a job in 2026. Let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, they basically did it again. Not quite to the same extent as the previous 2 drafts, but not too far off. I was a little bit surprised that they drafted 1.5 linebackers. I was a little bit surprised that they took 2 offensive tackles, no guard. I was a little bit surprised that they took a quarterback. I was fairly surprised that they didn't take a tight end or wide receiver, one of those 2. Not totally, but the combination of the 2 made me fairly, I could have wrote a little bit surprised they didn't take a tight end, a little bit surprised they didn't take a wide receiver. I was not surprised that they had a focus on the trenches. That's never a shock with the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's cover this draft. They started off with one of my top 2 probably favorite players in this draft, linebacker, edge rusher, Jahad Campbell. They're just going to take advantage of guys falling here. S+. Great pick. Then they followed up with another top 4 favorite player in the draft, safety Andrew Makuba. I had a first-round draft grade on him, late first, early second-round draft grade on him. They get him S+. Then in the 4th round, they got defensive tackle Ty Robinson. I really liked him a lot. Thought that was a good value at that point in the draft. A. Then, with the 5th round pick, they took slot cornerback/cornerback. We'll see what they do with him. That's a little bit of concern there. It seems like they're maybe going to use him on the perimeter. I don't know. We'll see. But Mac McWilliams was my guy. This was technically a touch early on my board, but also, if I had known that the NFL would be as low as they were on the cornerback room, I would have probably reached for him a little bit too if I was well enough aware of that, informed of that on draft day. Then they also took in the 5th round linebacker Smile Munden Jr. D. Little early, good player. Another 5th round pick here. Interior offensive lineman Drew Kendall. I don't know if they plan on using him as guard or center or both or whatnot. He's an interior defensive lineman though. Got an F. That was a little early for my draft board. In the 6th round, they get another my guy in quarterback Kyle McCord, who I had a higher draft grade on. I like him quite a bit. Maybe I was wrong on him. It's possible. But if I'm wrong on him, so is Chris Sims. So willing to be wrong on him this time. 6th round, offensive tackle Miles Hinton. I don't know who that is. I didn't have enough information. I think I had him in my list, but I just never got to him. 6th round, offensive tackle Cameron Williams. I did get to him. I think this is a great team fit. That's one of those pluses. And a bit of a my guy, bit of a scheme fit, all the above, earns you the other plus. It's a B++ there for Cameron Williams. Great fit for them. And they actually might, I could see them thinking of him as a guard with how they do that whole tackle to guard thing and his size. He's a developmental guy, a lot of development, very young, and high prospect coming out of high school. And then finally in the 6th round here, edge rusher Antoine Powell-Ryland. They just nailed it, Finished it off strong here. It's an A, great value for a strong player that I liked quite a bit. Not as much as Q Robinson, but he's kind of in that bucket. At the top of the newspaper, the article reads, another draft where the Eagles picked up the league's quote-unquote scraps. Yeah, they just love picking up the scraps, and, nobody else wants these guys. Okay, we'll take them. Well, he's a little banged up. We'll deal with it. We got a really good team. He can heal up. It'll be all right. Yeah, subjectively, I couldn't quite get to an S tier on this draft for them, but I sure could get close. S tier, A+, S-, kind of S-, A+ grading there. For the player capital, they had a fair amount of capital in this draft. That earned them an A. For the days 1 and 2 average draft grade for the players, gave them an S+. Look at that. Andrew Makuba and Jihad Campbell, no 3rd round draft grade there. And then on the 2nd day, all of those averaged a C+, and that's where I did struggle a little bit getting all the way to just a straight S or a straight S- even. I like a lot of these players. It's a pretty good draft, and all in all, it's a straight A+ here for the Eagles. I mean, they keep doing it, and they're taking guys that I like too a lot. How am I not supposed to love the Eagles? I don't necessarily want to love the Eagles, but I do, and I will for years, because they've just drafted a lot of guys that I like in recent times, and a lot of them are playing well. That is going to bring us on to the Washington Commanders, where we will be finishing up this draft class, a shorter one here. They started their draft off with offensive tackle Josh Connerly Jr., that earned him an A. At pick 61 in the 2nd round, they took cornerback Trey Amos, that earned him an S+. Loved it. He is a my guy. And it also filled a need for them. With pick 128 in the 4th round, they took wide receiver Jalen Lane, filled a need for them. I love it. C+ grade there. I think he'll do better than McCaffrey will for them, who they took in the 3rd round. Big fan of Jalen Lane, my guy. In the 6th round at pick 205, they took linebacker Kane Medrano. Borderline my guy. I did not feel comfortable giving him an F because I did like him, so that's one of those where I gave it an F+, even if he wasn't exactly a my guy. And another one where this last pick here, not exactly a my guy, but also I liked him quite a bit in running back Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, taken in the 7th round there. They stay patient, and that's what you had to do in this class for the running backs. They get a good one here at the end of the draft, B/B+ grade on that. This is a roster that still needs better depth, still needs improvement, and personally, coming into the draft with this kind of capital, I would have been wanting to trade out, and I feel like they probably planned on trading out of pick 61 there, but then they got to it, and with Trey Amos still available, they were just like, well, this is a guy we have a borderline 1st round draft grade on, we can't pass on him, so they drafted him. I would have guessed that that's roughly what happened there, and it's understandable. If I were to make an adjustment to this draft, I would have drafted edge rusher Antoine Powell-Ryland at pick 205 instead of Kane Medrano. That would have hit one of their bigger needs, in my book at least, with Antoine Powell-Ryland. Ultimately, at the top of the newspaper, it reads, 4 really good players. Yep, Josh Connerly Jr., Trey Amos, Jalen Lane, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or Kane Medrano, one of those two at least. 4 really good players. Subjectively, I couldn't quite get to an A here. Not a whole lot of players taken, and I do subjectively care about the number of players that are drafted because we know this is a little bit of a crapshoot ultimately. And, I mean, you could take a great player, a guy who's going to become an all-time Hall of Famer, and then he gets injured and his career's over with in the summertime. You don't even get a game out of him. So there is a certain amount of, numbers matter in terms of drafts and bringing in new, young, fresh talent onto your roster. But still, subjectively, it's a strong grade here. B+. Capital-wise, yeah, C-. They didn't have a whole lot of draft capital. In terms of their early grades, they're A+, that averaged out to an SA+ for their first and second day players. And on the third day, they averaged a C-/D+ grade for those picks. And ultimately, that lands them a B-. A little bit, not even disappointing, just missing a little bit of sand in their pants here for Washington, but it's a good draft. I would not be upset if I was Washington. I would just want more. I just want more. That's all. That's going to bring us to the end of this video, the end of the NFC North. Oops, there we go. And the NFC East, my bad, I was on autopilot there. The Philadelphia Eagles, once again, reign supreme with their A+ draft grade at the top of the division. Will continue. The New York Giants trying to etch their way up to number 2. It's going to be tough, but hey, if we can put some more drafts together, last year's draft, a strong one, A-, B+ here this year. If that holds true, all right, we're climbing out of this hole. Dallas Cowboys, B+ grade, strong grade, strong draft. They're usually pretty good drafters. And then the Washington Commanders, unfortunately, with a B-, but once again, I mean, it's a good B-, so, it's like if you get, like, really good quality ice cream, it's not your favorite flavor. In fact, it's not even, like, it's coconut, we'll just say. It's like, it's coconut ice cream. Well, it's still really good quality. So, that's it. There you go. Thank you very much. The AFC and NFC West video yet to come, but check out the South and the North videos if you haven't yet. Should be links in the description.